Thanks for checking out my video. Today we're going to be working on our cutting skills, our fine motor skills with the glue stick, and maybe some fine motor skills with our pre-writing strokes if we're going to do any line tracing. And we're also going to be building up some visual perception skills as we use these stamps. We're going to cut out the little stamp um, shadow shapes, and we are going to arrange them and spatially orient them correctly on our little templates here that we have to make jack-o'-lanterns. So we can just use these basic materials to really get a variety of different skills developed. You can be involved in any part of it, or take it to a different direction, or really focus on one direction. Maybe you're only working on coloring and you want to use these templates just for coloring pages. That's totally fine. If you're working on some visual perception skills and you want to complete these as maybe a parquetry puzzle, so something that would look something like this, where we would then match the shape to the corresponding piece there on the paper, that's fine. If you really want to work on your cutting skills, there's a lot of materials to use here to cut, and there are plenty of opportunities along the way to use a marker or crayon or colored pencils to work on those fine motor skills. So you can start your project by either coloring the pumpkin in first, or you can start by cutting these pieces off of the little note cards. So I think that's where I'm going to start, is by cutting these in half. So I'm going to get the rest of these materials out of the way, with the exception of my scissors and maybe a marker too. So I'll put those over here. These can live over here for now. And I will get my stack of cards and begin the process here. And I think to start, what I'd like to do is maybe just put a little visual cue here alongside of this, and that can just be where my scissors go, or at least kind of show us maybe a little bit of a margin of error, so as your student's cutting, we would know if we are inside of this margin of error of the line to cut, or if we go outside. So if we have any errors, we'll be able to tell real quickly. So I'm going to start just by orienting my scissors correctly, using my non-dominant hand to stabilize the object. I can isolate my fine motor skills by resting my hand on the desk, or I can develop some upper extremity strength in the deltoids and some postural stability if I remove the table altogether and just have my student hold the paper in their hand and the scissors as well. And then I'm going to begin cutting along these lines. Getting some great work here today with the scissors and just some good vertical snips. And for the beginning of this exercise, we can really allow a little bit more independence with our student here, in terms of using their scissors to cut out these cards. When we get into cutting out the shapes, and maybe there's a little bit more precision involved and safety might become an issue, then I think that might be an appropriate time to maybe assist a little bit more, or to just fully cut out the shapes for them if they don't have strong enough scissor skills. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and just finish the cutting of the cards right down the middle. Now that I've completed all this, we can go ahead and start cutting out these shapes, and the same principle applies as when we started cutting out right down the middle. So we can just use a visual cue, maybe a little bit of an extra boundary. I'm going to use this orange highlighter because I'm going to color my pumpkins orange, and I know that it won't stand out too much. So this could be something that they do, where your student kind of traces the lines, maybe a horizontal line this way to trace around the square and down. And then we can use that as a visual cue for our cutting portion of this. And again, this part requires a little bit more precision with your scissors. So if your student isn't quite strong enough with the scissors just yet, maybe it's a good time to either really hand over hand assist them with this activity, or just to go ahead and cut out these shapes for them. But if your student does have these skills, this is a great opportunity to really practice some precision with your scissor skills as we cut along these vertical lines and then a little bit of a diagonal line. We really have to manipulate it with both of our hands. So this part is actually great for the bilateral coordination component of cutting tasks. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out my first shape here. It's just going to be a couple snips along this line. I turn the paper using both of my hands. Maybe I have to put down my scissors to turn the paper and then reorient my scissors. That's okay. I'm cutting along a diagonal line. I can finish the cut there. And again, if we can manipulate this with just one hand, that would be great. Sometimes you have to put down the scissors and turn it. That's okay. And then we're going to finish this cut. Now we have a triangle, and I will put that over to the side because we will be using this later. Now I think I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of these. As I was completing the cutting task, I placed my note cards, my stack of note cards, on my dominant hand side because I know that I'm going to be using my scissors with my dominant hand. So this is encouraging my non-dominant hand to reach across the midline of my body, having to use some great bilateral coordination skills to then get the note card to bring it back to the midline to then cut. And as we have our note card on the right side of our visual field, we are also encouraging our horizontal pursuits over to the right side of the visual field to locate our target. Now that I have my shapes cut out, I can begin to use them as a parquetry puzzle with my pumpkin template. We can do some pumpkin parquetry, or I can just do a little receptive object labeling. Maybe I want to identify where the triangles are, where the squares are, where the circles are. And as we complete the activity, we can either glue them down onto the paper as we match, or we can just lay them out on the paper and match, and then remove them when we're done and move on to the next template. But there should be enough, I should have enough shapes cut out to complete all of the templates without running out of shapes. So for me, I think today I would like to use my glue stick and develop some fine motor skills with this glue stick, and then also some non-dominant hand stabilization, so developing some great bilateral coordination. So I think I'm going to use each piece to glue them onto my template here. So I'm going to get a little bit of space, maybe put my shapes at the top of my visual field and my template at the bottom. I have a couple of templates, so I'm going to organize that. So now I have an excuse to practice my vertical visual pursuits from the top of the visual field back down to the bottom of the visual field. So I think I'll leave it just arranged like this right here. So we can start by matching one piece at a time if we wanted to, but I'm going to go ahead and just start gluing because I'm pretty confident in what I'm doing here. So I'm going to have my student use both hands together to unscrew the glue stick here, or the top of the glue stick, and then to maybe screw up from the bottom here to get some glue. And then we're going to use our fine motor skills. This is a dynamic tripod grasp, or maybe a lateral tripod grasp. Really, we want to start to see some development of these fine motor skills right here. So I'm going to use the small space of the triangle and these other shapes here to really encourage and facilitate that movement. Then I'm going to orient my triangle and match it to the shape right here on the template. So not only are we working on our fine motor skills with our glue stick and our pincer grasp with these small little shape cutouts, but we're also working on our visual perception skills as we orient the object to the paper, and we are working on some other great visual perception skills like visual figure ground, where we have this kind of busy visual field and we have to kind of separate out the extraneous information and find our target right there. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of these. I've completed my activity with the templates that I've made here, but I can continue doing a little bit more work, kind of a little freestyle here. I printed out a free template from someone's Pinterest page. This is how this activity got started here. So I'm going to freestyle my own design here with a marker. And as I make my own design, I really want to be working on a variety of different shapes, maybe some diagonal lines or some vertical lines, or maybe just some arcs, ascending and descending arcs. I can also use the ones that we just did, the templates that we just completed, as kind of a model to copy from, so that we would be also developing some visual motor skills as we scan from our target here that we're copying from onto our clean piece of paper here. This is the same set of skills that we use when we are in class focusing on our activity, or maybe we're writing in class and the teacher has something up on the whiteboard. Maybe we're doing some sort of modeling up front, and the student needs to complete the task at their own desk. So we're developing the same skills here just by having a template that we're going to copy from. But for me, I like to just go ahead and do my own thing. Now I want to develop a little bit of my writing skills, so I don't necessarily have to do it that way. So I'm going to start by making my own shapes, and I'm going to work on coloring within the boundaries here. Some good fine motor skills. I'm coloring inside, and then I'm going to make another circle. Again, this is just what I want to do. Maybe you want to do squares or triangles, or any cool shape is encouraged here. And then I'm going to just do a square nose, color that in, and then I'm going to give it a big happy face and kind of color that one in too. So I've been able to use just some really basic materials today to develop a variety of different skills. Anything from working on some pre-writing strokes with the shapes here, all the way to our bilateral coordination with our utensil use, with the glue stick, the marker, and the scissors, and then some really great fine motor skills with all of the cutting that we just completed. And we can't forget about the visual motor and visual perception skills that we just worked on. A great exercise using these pieces as a parquetry puzzle. Thanks for checking out my video. I hope you found it useful. Please feel free to get in touch with me if you have any questions on how to implement these strategies with your student.